So, in this episode, a guy invades Deep Space Nine with an armed team of mercenaries and holds the command crew hostage, all so he can steal Dax's Trill symbiont. Not since RFK Jr. dined on roadkill has anyone wanted a brainworm that bad. This is a review of the Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode Invasive Procedures. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know who wins this game of Hide the Worm, be warned. Spoilers beyond this point. That's right, it's time to review Invasive Procedures, or maybe you call it by its alternate title, Let's All Forget About What Quark Did. There's a big plasma storm going on outside, and it's so dangerous that the entire station has been temporarily evacuated, a massive inconvenience for the residents and crew, but a tremendous boon for the Bajoran hotel business, no doubt. O'Brien and Odo are out in the docking ring, putting in the storm windows, when they discover Quark sitting in one of the airlocks. Odo demands to know what Quark is doing here, since A, Commander Sisko only agreed to allow him to stay on the station if he remained in his bar, and B, it would be weird to find anybody sitting all alone in an airlock like this. What, do you like the acoustics? Get the hell out of there! Quark insists he's just been sitting here since his brother Rom left on the evacuation shuttle. Odo doesn't buy it, but Quark's bullshit story works well enough to get them all to leave the area without Odo or O'Brien noticing the thing Quark put on the thing. The thing with the blinky lights there. I don't like the look of those blinky lights. In Ops, Dax detects a small ship approaching. Someone aboard the ship calls the station and claims that they're a cargo vessel that's been caught in the storm. Sisko agrees to let them dock, and Dr. Bashir heads to the infirmary to get ready in case there are any injuries. O'Brien opens the airlock after the ship is tractored in, and, uh-oh, it's a trick! These people don't need help! This woman, Mariel, two Klingon guys, and this guy, Varad, come aboard the station with guns, take away O'Brien and Odo's communicators, and force Odo to revert to his natural goo form and pour himself into a box so he won't make any trouble for them. From there, they go to the infirmary where they force Bashir to put the Odo box into a stasis chamber. Then, they grab Bashir and everybody heads to Ops. The gang reaches Ops and takes over, forcing the crew to the center of the room. This Varad guy is a little soft-spoken and unsure of himself, but he also seems like he's the leader. While Varad and the others go about their business, O'Brien tells Sisko that they must have disabled the security systems in the docking ring. And O'Brien has a good idea how, too. Quark. I told you that thing with the blinky lights was trouble. One of the Klingons goes to the bar to get Quark, who thought this whole operation was so he could sell some illegal merchandise to the Klingon guy. When the Klingon guy reveals that he doesn't care about the merchandise, Quark thinks he's playing hardball and goes, "That's okay, I can find dozens of other buyers for this little item. Oh, is that a fact?" So, that's why you agreed to sabotage station security to let this Klingon guy break in during an evacuation to sell it to him? Because people are beating down your door to buy it? You really expect this Klingon dude to swallow that? Come on, Quark. You're smarter than this. And Jesus, you could have at least tried to think of a way to frame Rom for putting the blinky thing on the wall of the airlock back there. You're getting sloppy, man. Back to Ops, where Varad reveals the true purpose behind this hijacking. He's a Trill, and he's come for Dax. Not Jadzia, the symbiont. It's a slug heist! Varad explains that he studied and worked his whole life to be a candidate for joining with a symbiont, but he was ultimately rejected. Jadzia tells him that it's nothing to be ashamed of, only a small percentage of Trill are ever actually joined with a symbiont. Most are just ineffectual losers like him, so he's got plenty of company. Varad refuses to accept that, however. He's taking the Dax symbiont, and he's escaping to the Gamma Quadrant with his girlfriend Mariel, and he's starting a new life as a worm-packing badass. And the two Klingon guys can take their payday and go do whatever, I guess. Bashir refuses to assist Varad because removing the symbiont will kill Jadzia. So Varad shoots O'Brien and says, "How about now?" Jadzia's like, "Please just do as he says, Julian, or next time he might shoot someone who isn't so accustomed to pain." Jadzia, Bashir, Varad, and one of the Klingons go to the infirmary. Mariel and the other Klingons stay in Ops to guard the rest of the crew. Bashir tries to give Varad a sedative before the transplant operation, but Varad's like, "No, I want to be awake so I can watch you cut on me because I'm a freak like that." So Bashir's like, "Okay then, weirdo. Jadzia, would you like a sedative, or are you a surgery pervert too?" Jadzia tells Bashir not to blame himself for what's about to happen. Bashir asks Jadzia to forgive him, and then he slices her belly open and pulls out her worm and puts the worm into Varad's belly, and Varad jizzes all over himself like the kinky little perv he is. Back to Ops, where Kira is letting Quark know that she's gonna kill him for his role in helping Varad and his mercenaries get aboard the station. Then Kira and Sisko chat up Mariel like, "How'd you get hooked up with this Varad loser anyway?" Mariel explains that they met while she was a sex worker on a planet where Varad was stationed as a communications clerk. When he left to return home to Trill, he took Mariel with him, and they've been together ever since. Sisko's like, "Well, I hope you had fun, because after today he's gonna be a whole different person. You get that, right? Joining with the symbiont is going to change him." Mariel's like, "I don't care. I love him, and I know him being joined won't be the end of our relationship." Is it a relationship? Or is it more of a situationship situation? It doesn't matter what you call it. Just in case you hadn't guessed it already by my hairdo, I'm going to stand by my man. Just then, Varad enters and he's like, "Check me out, assholes. I'm Varad Dax. I got my swagger now, so get used to this big worm energy." Meanwhile, in the infirmary, Bashir is trying to keep Jadzia alive. He asks the Klingon guy who's there to guard him to help out by waving a thing over the incision in Jadzia's abdomen. The Klingon guy is like, "Why should I? She's just gonna die anyway." And Bashir is like, "Will you just do it? Jesus Christ, just take the thing and wave the thing. Fuck!" The Klingon guy is like, "I respect you so much for that." And he takes the thing and waves the thing while Bashir wakes up Jadzia. She's not doing great, waking up without the symbiont, feeling alone and scared. Bashir promises to keep her alive long enough to get the symbiont back. In Ops, Sisko steps up to Varad like, "Dax? My old friend Dax?" And Varad says, "Yes, it's me, Benjamin. I now have 8 lifetimes of memories." Sisko says, "So you must remember how we met." "Yep, and I remember that time we tied the science officer of the Livingston to a chair and force-fed him 8 servings of Andorian Red Bat and then kicked him in the stomach. And you remember my bachelor party? Was that thing I just said not at your bachelor party?" Then Sisko says, "Do you remember when we discovered the wormhole?" And Varad is like, "Yeah, one of Jadzia's proudest moments." And Sisko says, "And now Jadzia's dying on a table in the infirmary. The Dax I know would never be okay with that. Hey, there's still time before the symbiont permanently bonds with your body. Why don't we go down there and you can just give Jadzia her belly worm back, huh?" Varad's like, "No can do, good buddy." And Sisko says, "The Dax I knew would never do this. We are good buddies. No more." Varad's like, "Is this a breakup? Is this a friendship breakup?" And that bums him out, so he goes to pout in the office. Quark gets tired of waiting around, and also he realizes that Kira is literally going to kill him if he doesn't do something to redeem himself, so he attacks the Klingon guy in Ops. They struggle, Quark goes down, and he comes up selling an injury to his ear. Varad sends Quark down to the infirmary, where Bashir once again enlists the help of the other Klingon guy. Only this time, when Bashir gives the Klingon guy a thing to wave over Quark's ear, the Klingon guy stabs Quark in the ear with it. And can I just say, angry, resentful Klingon medical assistant should have become a recurring character. Justify it any way you want. He gets sentenced by a Federation court to work for Bashir as a form of community service. I don't care. I don't think I would ever have gotten tired of watching this Klingon guy brutalize patients while technically following Bashir's orders. It's just funny. Anyway, while the Klingon guy is stabbing Quark, Bashir walks up behind him and gives him a shot of knockout juice right in the neck. Then they get the box of Odo out of the stasis drawer, and Quark picks the lock to release Odo. Back in Ops, the plasma storm outside is clearing enough to make it safe to travel again. Apparently, the plan is that Varad will take his ship into the wormhole first, while the rest of his team remains behind to make sure he isn't followed. Then, they'll steal a runabout and fly into the wormhole after him, and they'll all meet up at some prearranged point on the other side. Varad grabs Kira as a hostage just in case he runs into any trouble on the way to the airlock, and they and the other Klingon guy exit. Sisko walks up to Mariel like, "Girl, you know he's changed. Are you really going to throw your life away for him? Do you seriously think he's going to be waiting for you on the other end of that wormhole?" Mariel goes, "Yeah, I guess not." Here, and she gives Sisko her communicator and phaser. Varad makes it to the airlock where his ship is supposed to be, but it's gone because, surprise, motherfucker, Odo's back, and he cut that ship loose. Varad runs away while Kira beats up the Klingon guy. Varad gets to the airlock where the runabout is waiting, but finds Cisco there, pointing a phaser. Varad's like, who are you kidding, man? You're not gonna shoot me. If you shoot me, you might injure the symbiont, and then what happens to your precious Jadzia? Cisco's like, the same thing that happens if I do nothing, so I might as well take a shot. Get it? Take a shot? Never mind, you're unconscious. We cut to the infirmary where Bashir has yanked the Dax symbiont out of Varad and stuffed it back into Jadzia's guts where it belongs. Varad's not handling it well. He looks at Muriel, who is by his side, like, I feel so alone. I can't remember any of the knowledge or the confidence it gave me. It's gone. And you betrayed me to them. Is this a breakup? A situationship breakup? Muriel promises to always stay with him. Girl, this man is an anchor. You need to cut yourself loose. Whatever, not my business. Jadzia hugs Cisco and says, now that my symbiont is back, I remember everything Varad did and everything he thought. And Jesus, he really is such a skeevy little creep. And now I have to live with his loser memories for the rest of my life? I do not care for that. I wouldn't either, Jadzia, but fortunately we can just not talk about it from now on because that's the end. Invasive Procedures is not a perfect episode. There are a few holes in it, but I've always liked it enough to not mind the holes, and that's mostly thanks to its excellent crop of guest actors. There's John Glover as Varad, Muriel is Megan Gallagher, a familiar face to fans of 90s American TV to be sure. She played Catherine on Millennium and Allison on one of my all-time favorite shows, Nowhere Man, as well as popping up in Star Trek shows a couple of times after this. One of the Klingon guys is Tim Russ, making another guest appearance on his way to landing his signature role as Tuvok on Star Trek Voyager, and the other Klingon guy is played by Steve Rankin, who previously played the injured Romulan guy who died rather than accept a blood transfusion from Worf on TNG, and would go on to play genocidal war criminal Colonel Green on Enterprise. All four guest stars are good here, but the standout and the one who really makes the episode is John Glover, a well-known actor from film and TV, Annie Hall, Gremlins 2, Batman and Robin. He was Lionel Luthor on Smallville. He was the voice of the Riddler on Batman the Animated Series. He's one of those actors who always gets it, who is always good, even if everything around him is rotten. Looking at you, Batman and Robin. And his performance as Varad is definitely the highlight of this episode. Varad is a tricky character. I had some fun with him in the plot summary, but I also meant a lot of what I said. The dude is seriously a loser. He was rejected for being joined with a symbiont, just like the overwhelming majority of his fellow Trills, but instead of accepting it, taking it like a grown-up, and moving on with his life, he decided to make his mediocrity everybody else's problem. He's a pathetic, contemptible man who is uncomfortably reminiscent of more than a few public figures in the present day. Don't you think? But Glover, with some help from the script, is able to shade in some complexity while never turning away from Varad's essential nature as a resentful, entitled failure. Prior to being joined, Varad is hesitant, soft-spoken, shy. One almost wonders how someone so seemingly weak-willed was even able to put together this symbiont heist plot. Then, in the infirmary, as Bashir is prepping for surgery, we get a glimpse of a more assertive side to Varad when he refuses anesthesia and instructs Bashir on how to proceed with the operation. So, it's not that he's incapable of taking charge. He just lacks the confidence most of the time. That's the tragedy of the character. He thinks he needs to be joined with a symbiont in order to live up to his potential, but does he? After he's implanted with the Dax symbiont, he's definitely a changed man, and Glover plays that change beautifully. He stands up taller, his voice gets deeper and stronger, he radiates pride and self-assurance. I've had Superman on the brain lately, so the obvious comparison that comes to mind is the way Christopher Reeve plays the difference between Clark Kent and Superman. Sisko warns Muriel that after he's joined, Varad will be a totally different person, and Glover makes that entirely believable while also maintaining continuity with the old, worm-free Varad. But it was that old, worm-free Varad who came up with this plan to invade a Starfleet space station, take its command crew hostage, and steal the Dax symbiont from Jadzia in the first place. And he does it! He succeeds. Up to a point, anyway. Yes, it's a horrible thing to do. It's a crime. It's multiple crimes. But it also takes brains and planning and guts and audacity. And Varad does it all before he gets that worm in his belly. If he'd been able to get over the setback of not being selected for joining and accept that his life wasn't over, even though it wasn't going to turn out the way he wanted it to, he would have been fine. He's obviously a smart guy. He's got a gorgeous girlfriend. He's apparently got enough money to hire Klingon mercenaries. And now he's going to prison because somebody told him no, and he just couldn't let it go. Take heed, children. Megan Gallagher as Muriel shows a character who is similarly being limited by her lack of belief in herself. Muriel tells Sisko that when she met Varad, she was working at what she calls an accommodation house on what sounds like a pretty rough planet. She owes him for giving her a way out of there, and she also seems to think that she's unworthy on her own, that she needs Varad. She needs to be needed by Varad in order to be somebody. It's easy to see how the two of them wound up together. They each have a variation of the same problem. Where Varad believes he needs the Dax symbiont, Muriel believes she needs Varad. She doesn't. No one needs Varad. If Muriel wasn't throwing him pity fucks, he'd be an incel along with everything else. So I guess we owe her for that. The Klingons are the Klingons. I really don't have much to say about them that I haven't already. They're fine. I was only half kidding when I said the one who stabs Quark in the ear with the medical instrument should have been made a recurring character and forced to work for Bashir in the infirmary on an ongoing basis. Him jamming that thing into Quark's ear is funny no matter how many times I watch it. Speaking of Quark, here's where we get into some of the holes in this one. I don't mind Quark helping Varad and the others get on to the station. I'm fine with scumbag Quark. I like scumbag Quark. If you're going to write Quark as a straightforward good guy, there's no point to the character. Plus, Quark doesn't know that the goal of this operation is to abduct Jadzia and steal her symbiont. He thinks it's about some illegal business deal. So it's not as if he's intentionally responsible for allowing mercenaries to hijack the station and almost getting Jadzia killed. But intentionally or not, he is still responsible for that. At one point, Kira tells him, no matter what happens now, you're through here. Seems reasonable to me. Quark didn't know what Varad, Muriel, and the Klingons were planning, but he still knowingly compromised station security so they could come aboard. And for what? Money? Yeah, that's it, dude. You're done. Hit the road. Sell the bar to Rom. Or don't. Shut it down all the way. Deep Space Nine doesn't need Quark's bar anyway. Everyone will get along just fine hanging out at Poncho's Happy Bottom Riding Club. Quark does redeem himself eventually, but does he? He obviously realizes how deeply he has screwed up, which is why he picks the fight with the Tim Russ Klingon to create a pretext for going to the infirmary so he can help Bashir take out the Steve Rankin Klingon, and he breaks Odo out of the box, and Odo is instrumental in stopping Varad's escape and saving the day, but is that really enough? The station was hijacked, the command crew was held hostage at gunpoint, O'Brien was shot, Bashir was forced to commit medical assault on Jadzia, and Jadzia almost died, and Quark's actions enabled it all. That's a really big deal. Sure, he was also instrumental in resolving the situation he helped to create, but that should only be worth a reduced sentence, wouldn't you think? Instead, the last time we see Quark in the episode is when he unlocks the box Odo is being kept in. And, unless I'm forgetting something, we never hear about any of this again. The next episode of Deep Space Nine comes along and life for Quark is the same as it ever was. And actually, that part is fine with me. DS9 does a much better job with ongoing character arcs than TNG did, but it's still a pretty episodic show. The part that bothers me is that Quark disappears from the episode after picking the lock on the box, and nobody mentions him again. So the implication is that things with him are square. Oh, Quark fucked up, but then he pulled it together and helped out at the end, so we're good. I think we either needed to see him help out more, take a more active role in stopping Varad from getting away, maybe, or at least have the suggestion before the end of the episode that Odo or Cisco or Kira or somebody hasn't forgiven him yet, and he's going to be spending some time in the brig, even if he's out by the next episode and we don't actually see him serving his time. Just a little bit extra is all it would take. Obviously, the episode isn't about Quark, and it shouldn't be, but the way Quark is handled in it makes it seem like he's getting away with a very serious offense, a crime and a betrayal of the trust of the other characters. Scumbag Quark is fine by me, but given that he is surrounded by non-scumbags, there should be consequences for his transgressions, even if there's only enough screen time to imply them or refer to them through dialogue. The one important thing about this one I haven't mentioned yet is that it's a pretty good Cisco episode. And even though Cisco and Jadzia have limited time on screen together, it's a pretty good Cisco and Dax episode. The relationship between the two of them winds up being crucial to the plot. Cisco's determination to help and protect his friend comes across clearly, as does his guile, as he uses that friendship with Dax to try and persuade Varad to give up his plan and return the symbiont to Jadzia after he's been joined. It doesn't work, but it's a good idea to try and appeal to the sense of decency and justice he knows to be possessed by Dax. And it's okay because Cisco's attempt to persuade Muriel does work. By appealing to Muriel's love for Varad and emphasizing how different that Varad is as a joined Trill without trying too hard to paint him as a villain in Muriel's eyes, Cisco ultimately manages to convince her to give up. Before she hands over the phaser, she tells Cisco, "I won't betray him." And Cisco replies, "I don't want you to betray him. I want you to save him." He's asking her not just to help him save Jadzia's life, but to save the Varad she's always known and loved before he's gone forever, one way or another. We do get a little bit of action Cisco as he whips some Klingon ass during a brief scrap with the hijackers, but most of his heroics in this one are of a psychological nature. Yes, Cisco can yell and scream with the best of them, but he also knows how to talk to people. He's good in a fight, but his brains are just as effective as his brawn, and he'll use brain, brawn, and anything else he can find to save one of his people in trouble. That's a top-shelf Starfleet captain right there, even though he technically isn't a captain yet. Invasive Procedures is written by John Welpley and Robert Hewitt Wolfe from a story by Welpley and directed by veteran Star Trek director Les Landau. It's a good episode. Flawed, not representative of the very best Deep Space Nine was capable of, but solid, with strong performances from the regulars and the guest stars, a villain who is multi-layered but also straightforwardly hateable, and a bit where a Klingon stabs Quark in the ear, which is not only funny, but also richly deserved on Quark's part, and as such will have to do, since it's apparently the only comeuppance for any of this he's ever going to get. Those are my thoughts on Invasive Procedures. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please join me next time as this Hijacked batch continues. The next episode I'll be reviewing is another from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, an episode from Season 6 titled One Little Ship. See you next time for that. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.